On a typical day, domestic violence hotlines nationwide receive over 20,000 calls. Every 9 seconds, a woman is assaulted or beaten in the United States. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have been physically abused by their intimate partner. 5 million children witness domestic violence each year here in the United States. Domestic violence is an aggressive or violent behavior occurring in the home between intimate partners. Domestic violence affects every member in a family and includes physical, sexual, and psychological violence. The frequency and severity of domestic violence is not always the same for every case, and even if no actual physical violence occurs, psychological and emotional abuse are just as devastating. Because domestic violence is so prevalent in our society, the American government has made policies and acts to help the many victims who face abuse. The Violence Against Women Act was introduced by then Senator Joe Biden in 1990 and later passed in 1994. This act was one of the first legislative decisions to end violence against women. It provided $1.6 billion towards investigation of violent crimes towards women along with funding victim services. Domestic violence alone costs between $5 and $10 billion a year in healthcare, criminal justice, and other special costs. The Violence Against Women Act changed attitudes among law enforcement, judges, victims, and society as a whole. This act was not made to believe it could completely end violence against women, but to empower women to want to speak up and also change law enforcement's view on crimes against women. This act includes life-saving service, including Native women, immigrants, the LGBT victims, college students, youth, and public housing residents. Women's rights are protected to a greater extent with this act created and enforced. After the act was passed, Joe Biden was instrumental in the securing of a new Office of Violence Against Women within the U.S. Department of Justice. Some critics believe that the act failed to reduce the number of crimes committed against women, when, in fact, the Violence Against Women Act produced better housing and aid for victims as well as provide better domestic violence courts. It's challenging to understand why someone stays with a violent or abusive partner. The victim may hold into the relationship hoping things will change or because they are so in love with the abuser. When children are involved, a victim may stay with the abuser for the sake of the children. A victim may also be in denial of what's happening and may minimize the abuse thinking he or she did wrong. Our beliefs and religions may also play a part in why people stay in these relationships, teaching us that divorce is wrong and forgiveness is key. An abusive person wants power and control over their partner. They do this through isolating their partners from friends and family and attempting to make their partner feel as if the abuse is their fault. This is all done in hopes that you won't tell anyone and so that no one believes you when you do tell them. This gives the victims feelings of hopelessness, discouragement, and unworthiness. Because of this, victims may feel like reaching out is not worth the effort. Domestic violence can result in children feeling starved for attention and approval. Some are diagnosed with PTSD. In fact, living with domestic violence significantly alters a child's DNA, aging them prematurely 7 to 10 years. 1 in 3 women around the world have experienced some form of domestic violence. Less than 40% of abused women ask for help, and less than 10% actually go to the police. Domestic violence is prominent in many undeveloped countries that are located in Africa, Asia, and Oceania, Australia. Each of these countries are also accepting of wife beating. Wife beating is a social acceptance that allows men to hit their wife for being out of line. Statistics show that 6 to 64% in Africa, 6 to 67% Asia, and 17 to 68% Oceania, Australia of women have experienced abuse, be it sexually or physically. In comparison, in North America, 7 to 38% of women experience some form of abuse. When it comes to homicide and domestic violence, 2 out of 3 victims are women globally. Domestic violence can end fatally, however, survivors never really get over the traumatic events. The effects of abuse are the same around the world. Victims of abuse struggle with depression, PTSD, anxiety, mentally and physically, STD, STIs, infertility, and chronic pain. Children who have witnessed a parent being abused are more likely to repeat the same actions to their spouse. They suffer with emotional instability and have behavioral problems in their childhood. Women who are abused account for the increase of higher infant mortality rates and birth defects. Domestic violence is prevalent in our world today. Be a voice for the victims.